Okay, yeah, this is Ace and Beaky here, and again, a lot of times I rehash some old stuff that's kind of like yesterday's news, and that can be a little bit late to the party, but sometimes whenever the dust settles and you can kind of think clearly without having people scream at you with possibly incomplete information, it might help you come at a balanced approach. I've heard a lot of the people who have criticized Netflix for trying to censor some anime about some goofy, cute anime girl who's 19 with big boobs, but they're okay with Cuties and that their leader has been found with child pornography. So there's probably something to be said about the business as a whole. But my take on Cuties is that after doing a little bit of research, and I'm going to admit, a lot of my research was done through just some guy, that guy on YouTube who's got that cool cartoon version of himself and makes jokes about how people think he needs to drink water. And what does he know? He's just some guy. But the thing is, that's a joke he makes. I'm not being mean. But the thing is that there's also, I kind of also talked to somebody who did some research, and the basic conclusion that I can get from is Cuties is not above being criticized, but at least get your facts straight, kind of leave your emotional outrage, I don't want to say at the door, but like in your back pocket, because there's something to be said about criticizing it for screwing up. But it's also really about understanding what was going on. From what I understand, after listening to just some guy and even a coworker at work, on top of listening to people point out the hypocrisy of Netflix as a whole, I've come to understand that Cuties is not trying to be pedo bait on purpose, but it did by consequence. So we shouldn't necessarily accuse the creator of Cuties of trying to set girls up for pedophilia like she's just, human trafficking out in the open. But we do have to point out about how she might have actually even been trying to do a good thing, but she failed. And just some guy has a really good video on this. I'm not affiliated with him, but I think that he talked about it in the best way that kind of helps you calm down and get off of a high horse, so that it's not that he takes a side of it, but it stops you from coming at it at the wrong angle. And I think the thing is that to talk about is that Cuties was probably a show that the creator intended to protest objectification and sexualization of little girls. She was probably trying to go against that, and I even heard somebody say that maybe she was talking about her own life and that it needed to be out there. We shouldn't hate her for that, but we might have to give her some very unpleasant constructive criticism in the fact that what she was trying to do backfired. And just some guy says that she probably should have done a less graphic documentary instead of trying to do it this way. So it's kind of like, what did she do? It's kind of like whenever Bobby Hill tried to do a Sunday school presentation like it was a magic show. And that embarrassed his parents, and it was unintentionally blasphemous or sacrilegious. Speaking of religion, it's kind of like that guy who wrote Paradise Lost. He was criticized by people who thought he was well-meaning but didn't realize he was making people sympathize with the devil. He was trying to make an epic like the Odyssey, but about how the devil fell from grace. But when he did it, his choice of words and his personification of the devil kind of made people want to root for the devil and see God as a sort of an out-of-touch or outdated, parental figure that was was kind of like a tyrant without necessarily meaning to be. And so I think his last name was Hilton. You can correct me in the comics. I'm a retard. I forgot what it was called. But Paradise Lost, and the guy who wrote that, even though the guy wasn't a theocrat, he was an elitist, but he wasn't a theocrat despite his religious writings. He unintentionally made people of that era sorta, kinda sympathize with the devil in the way he was presented in that book. And this guy was like a devout Christian trying to get people to like God and trying to like combine Christianity's background story, but with something like Shakespeare or Homer's Odyssey. But the way he personified it is that he made the devil a sympathetic character on accident, and he made God kind of seem like a stuffy or unpleasant person that you really just wanted to get away with. And that is like, is God just kind of like a cosmic Saddam Hussein that's really more about keeping himself in power than he is about being gentle and understanding humans? And is God against freedom and enlightenment principles? And even if God was good, is he still more concerned with just keeping things under the control of his monarchy than he is about doing what's progressive and spiritually enlightening? And that whenever you show that kind of stuffy authority figure, a parental authority figure, in a time when people were trying to embrace science and technology and more classically liberal forms of government, and then the devil just kind of seems like a well-meaning teenager that's been done wrong a few times and wants to do it, you kind of make people sympathize with the devil and want to take his side. Now, ironically, Anakin Skywalker from Star Wars was a better version of having kind of like the young teenager person turn to the dark side, but in a way that didn't make you sympathize. Like, you sympathized with him as in you felt sorry for him, but you didn't want to take his side. The Joker also did a better version of this in the movie. But yeah, getting back to Cuties, I think, like Paradise Lost, made you unintentionally feel sorry, or made you unintentionally come off like it was basically pedo bait. And she didn't mean to do that. She has to take consequences of her action. She has to take responsibility. She has to understand her mistakes. And she has to understand that maybe in a different timeline, it would have been better if she did a less graphic documentary or an autobiography about what she went through, and that became a better dramatization. I think the lady meant well, but her head was in the clouds and it backfired. So, is it okay to criticize Cuties? Yes. Is it okay to criticize Netflix as a whole for kind of being hypocritical for going against that one anime character who's 19 but has big boobs, but, Cuties kind of came through? Yeah, it's hypocritical, but before we call them, before we make them out to be the devil, let's just realize that some of the specific things that we're looking at was less about people trying to be bad and more about people trying to do the right thing but drunk. It was less, I think Cuties is more of a byproduct of people being retarded and tone deaf and short-sighted, since just some guy says, think more than one step ahead. It's going to be more, it's more about being tone deaf, short-sighted, and retarded, and not thinking things through, and getting caught up with being artsy-fartsy and controversial than it is, yay, I'm trying to make something for pederasses. So, we can criticize it and be fair, but be fair when you criticize it. If you must judge righteously, and the truth will set you free. That way you can criticize it without having a whole bunch of hatred or self-righteousness in your heart, something I myself and a lot of people nowadays need to keep in the back of our minds. Wish you the best. Ace and Beaky out.